Hello, hello, hello. Exciting crowd here today. How are you guys doing? All good? Nice, nice. So, today's topic is learnings on layer 2s. I'm Hilmar. I'm one of the founders of Gelato. And quick agenda. I will introduce the presentation with a bit of context about Gelato and why I talk about learnings about layer 2s. I will talk a bit about data points that we are collecting and sort of trends that we are seeing. And also sort of asking a question here is, should rollups actually sort of settle to Ethereum, and should they actually pay Ethereum, or are there maybe other architectures that we could be exploring as an ecosystem? Let's maybe jump in right away. So what is Gelato? We call Gelato the verifiable cloud. And what it consists of is kind of like 3 layers. At the top, we have a rollups as a service platform where we work together with projects in the space to help them deploy and launch their rollups, OP stack, Arbitrum Orbit, Polygon CDK, potentially more stacks in the future. And you can really come to a platform one click, and the thing sort of runs and it scales to how much usage you really can sort of gather. And the exciting part about Gelato, compared to maybe other service providers out there, is that we have developed a really strong middleware services layer that we combine with our rollup as a service platform, where we offer users to, for example, create push-based oracles for low latency DeFi applications such as perp dexes, abstract away gas on their rollups completely, supply verifiable randomness, all these kind of things that games, DeFi applications, and so on require. We can offer them out of the box on a single platform with a single click. And this is really where we want to go to. We want to minimize and lower the cost to deploy a fully functional rollup, not just a vanilla blockchain with nothing on there that you can't really use for anything, but really imagine the same environment you have on Ethereum today with all the infra on your rollup with a click, and as sort of cost effective as possible, right? And then it kind of scales with your needs. And this also includes a bunch of third-party services that we tightly integrate, from indexing to multi-sigs, wallet as a service, and so on. So really like an end-to-end platform for your development needs. As an example here, one of our customers is Raya. They are a super exciting project building next generation perp DEX as an L2 on the Arbitrum Orbit stack. Their DEX that they are building is fully gasless, so users are not paying a single cent to use it. It's really like a Web 2 user experience. We are driving the cost per transaction down to the minimum. Data is not being posted to Ethereum. It's posted on a data availability committee. The chain itself still settles to Ethereum. There are up-to-date prices every 4 seconds. They have actually 100 millisecond block time, so like toxic order flow and stuff like this, arbitrage is minimized through that. And the cool thing is they have a fully functional interoperable bridge setup, so you can bridge in assets from any chain you want, Arbitrum, Base, whatever, not only Ethereum. And this is, I think, a great example of a project using our services quite heavily for all the features that they want to offer. We have over 38 chains in production today. An example of some cool ones are, for example, Fox News. They recently deployed their rollup on Gelato to combat fake news and AI-generated content by onboarding Times, New York Times, for example, to push verifiable hashes of their content they are posting so users can actually validate it. And then there are some general purpose chains like Lisk, Asta, and then also a lot of gaming-related chains. So we see really a wide array of cool use cases. And we are really seeing an uptick of layer 2s and layer 3s deploying this year. I think there are over 120 rollups that are already confirmed to already have launched or will or are about to launch in our ecosystem. And an interesting trend that we are seeing is that until last year, most of them were really traditional layer 2s that also settled on Ethereum, posted data to Ethereum. But today, more and more L3s are actually launching. And I will go in a bit into why we think that is. And not only are projects launching more chains and more layer 3s, but also they are exploring different data availability solutions, right? Data availability is basically where do you post the data as a rollup, and it used to be just Ethereum, as you can see in the chart, but this year compared to last year, we already have a 450% increase in chains that do not post on Ethereum. They post on data availability committees, they post on Celestia, they post potentially in the future on like EigenDA or other DA solutions. And 60% of all the chains actually do not post to Ethereum that launched today, which is this year, which is basically the larger part, right? And most of these are optimistic rollups. So Validiums or ZK rollups are still sort of lacking behind the trend quite a bit. And indeed, most of our customers, they are launching optimistic rollups. Regarding the TVL that you see, we're actually about to flip Ethereum in terms of the TVL that is available. Obviously, there's some caveats here, right? Like if you have TVL on rollups, then it kind of like also lives on Ethereum if you use the canonical bridge, right? But what we expect to see until the end of the year is actually the TVL that comes from Ethereum and also comes from two other sources, which are like other chains that are not Ethereum, and assets that are issued natively on layer 2s to slowly exceed Ethereum, right? And this will be an interesting point in time because, yeah, what happens to Ethereum when actually like other chains will have more native asset issued than Ethereum? Like, do we still want to sell to Ethereum? It's a question that we will be going into a bit deeper in a moment. And still though, Ethereum for the layer 2s out there is still the largest source of liquidity today. And how you can look at a rollup, of course, is a rollup is a chain and a bridge, right? And especially if you build an L2 on Ethereum, what you really get out of the box is a secure, trust-minimized bridge to Ethereum where people can bridge assets in and can bridge assets out again, either very fast via ZK proofs, but expensive, or very slow via validity proofs, and it takes like 7 days today, right? Well, what is interesting to see is that more and more assets are actually natively minted on layer 2s, and USDC is contributing a big chunk to that. Over $4.3 billion worth of USDC is actually natively issued on layer 2s, such as Arbitrum and Base and so on. And you don't really need an Ethereum layer 2 bridge in order to secure that, because USDC and Circle and Coinbase are really the security mechanism that secures these assets. And then also external bridges are slowly growing. So chains used to only bridge in via the canonical bridges, but if you talk to the developers building rollups, the canonical bridges suck. Well, they don't suck, but they are slow and no one really uses them. Or no one really wants to use them. They all want to use fast bridges and want to bridge in via Base or Arbitrum. And so yeah, this is a clear trend we are seeing. And this is an interesting one. I think the first pie chart is a bit wrong. It should be like 99% versus 1%. But these are basically these are 3 different layer 2s. Rhea, which is like the perpdex L2, which is the second largest Arbitrum orbit chain that is deployed on Gelato. Then we have Base in the middle and Arbitrum on the right. And what is interesting to see is like Arbitrum is the oldest, right? And if you look, over 66% of all the assets that are issued on Arbitrum actually originate from Ethereum. So they're bridged in via the canonical bridge. That is kind of like the sort of native bridge of the layer 2, right? And then you have over 28% actually being natively issued. These are probably some meme coins and stuff, right? And USDC. And then only 5% come from other layer 2s. This is probably because Arbitrum is the biggest layer 2. And so you don't really need to bridge assets in from other layer 2s. But if you look at a slightly younger layer 2, such as Base, for example, there we see an interestingly different trend. And this is that the assets, which is mostly ETH, bridged in via the canonical bridge, the layer 2 bridge, only constitutes to roughly a quarter of all the assets that Base has. Actually, 70% of all the assets on Base are natively issued to the chain. This is mostly USDC that can be natively issued on Base without actually having to go through the canonical bridge. But this is interesting because Base is settling to Ethereum, right? And they're paying Ethereum a lot of fees in order to secure the assets that are being bridged to Ethereum, but actually only 25% of all the assets are secured by this bridge. And they don't get any security for the rest, right? And then the extreme case, and the chart is unfortunately wrong, it should be 99%, is Rhea. And actually 99% of all the assets are coming from different L2s, from Base, from Arbitrum. So Rhea's paying Ethereum for settlement, but they don't get anything out of it, really. They don't have any security when it comes to the funds that are being bridged in or not. So should they be a layer 2, really, or should they maybe be something different, or should applications that are similar be something different? This is a question that we are asking ourselves. And so what if you, as a chain, you do not source liquidity via the canonical bridge? Question, should you settle to Ethereum like normal L2s do? Or should you maybe not settle to Ethereum, right? Should you pay Ethereum as a settlement layer, even if you don't get that much benefits from it in practice? And I think this is what, especially the Celestia community is sort of thinking about as well. And there is this concept which is called a sovereign rollup, which stands in stark contrast to being an enshrined rollup, which is what an Ethereum layer 2 is, for example. Ethereum layer 2, you get a canonical bridge that is enshrined to Ethereum. Sovereign rollup doesn't have this. Sovereign rollups are much more like a layer 1. They just outsource data availability and consensus to a data availability network like Celestia, and then they sort of settle within the network itself. Of course, you still need bridges, right? You might still want to get assets in from other chains. But in order to do that, you then can build custom bridges like what Rhea did that use, validity proofs, ZK proofs to prove only certain events that have been emitted on each chain, and then you can move assets between. And you don't need to constantly just settle to Ethereum like the layer 2s do today. I'm not saying that sovereign rollups are the way the industry is heading, right? We just realized that this is an interesting trend that we are observing, and there are a lot of chains that are just paying Ethereum for nothing. And if you step out of the Ethereum maxi bubble and you think of Ethereum as a service provider for data availability and being a reliable asset issuer that you trust, but you don't get any security from Ethereum for your assets on an L2, then why is the L2 paying Ethereum in the first place for its security? It's just it's just nonsense, really. So yeah, this is just something that we're observing that I think is quite interesting to see. And yeah, maybe to round things up, there are several trends that we are observing as Gelato when it comes to rollups launching, and in general how people are using layer 2s. First of all, I think we are past the point where many rollups are sort of just building the next general purpose chain without much differentiation. I think there's a consensus in the industry that we are going more to purpose-specific rollups. These can be application-specific, this can be community or sort of country-specific rollups. And how we see this really is we see rollups as verifiable servers at Gelato. And if you are building an application that you can run on a centralized server, but it just means people have to trust you, and this creates costs around auditing and monitoring, you should just put this on a verifiable server. Fox, for example, is an interesting example of this, as I described. The New York Times doesn't have to trust that Fox doesn't tamper with the attestations that they are collecting from other publishers that are stored on their layer 2. They can just run a node and verify it themselves, that everything has been sort of handled correctly. And I think this is a big reason why the New York Times or Times has actually sort of agreed to participate in their program, right? And I think we will see more and more real-world use cases coming up that are similar to that. Additionally, I think chain abstraction, everyone heard about it. For me, this means that users don't really know on which chains they are on. It doesn't mean the chains don't exist anymore. It's just they don't even know which chain they are. And what do you need for that? You need full gas abstraction. You need to have scalability that can be horizontally. So you can have applications that might live on 3 different chains and shard their state between them, and they might elastically scale up and down, but the user doesn't even realize this, right? Like if you are using Amazon, you don't know which server you just interact with to view and buy this asset. And so I think this is a big trend that we are seeing, and 90% of all the chains that are deployed on Gelato actually use our services to abstract gas away from their users. And I think in a couple of years, no one will pay gas anymore. It's just what it is, especially with 7702 and other EIPs coming around. And then there's the emergence of roll-up clusters that we are observing. So we've seen Arbitrum kind of like spearhead this at the beginning with like L3s being built on top of Arbitrum. We have like Optimism with a superchain. And we believe that we are entering now a space where we see different clusters of applications that are kind of like close, they want to be close to each other emerge, that build and interconnect horizontally and also vertically. And we believe that like in a year from now, you have not only Optimism and Arbitrum, but a bunch of them that somehow sort of interconnect asynchronously, but between each other go very close to synchronous composability. And they have curated communities, curated infrastructure, and are specialized for low latency DeFi, high frequency gaming, and so on. And then the last point that I mentioned earlier is non-enshrined rollups. As I said, when you're not using the bridge from Ethereum, why are you paying Ethereum for settlement? And if you're not even using it for DA, why are you paying Ethereum for anything, right? You maybe want to still be aligned with Ethereum, but for me, alignment is not a long-term sustainable business model. You need to provide value. And Ethereum does have value, a lot of value, because it has assets issued on its chain that it can make available trustlessly via its bridge. But the more assets are bridged to like Arbitrum and other chains, the more other layer 2s can also tap into those and don't actually need to settle on Ethereum anymore. And so maybe should they settle on Arbitrum or Optimism instead, or Base, right? That's an open question that I cannot answer today, but I think this is just a trend that we are seeing again from all these chains that we are launching. Cool, that's already it. Thanks a lot for listening. I hope you learned a thing or two today. I'm around still for an hour, so if you have questions, just let me know. Thanks.